Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Coffee Talk! Today, we're going to talk about goddess worship. Dun, dun, dun. Before we get started, I wanted to thank all of you who helped support me this past week. My schedule got all shot to pieces with my trip out to Oregon and back, but I am back. I took care of all the necessary business. A lot of loose ends came to a conclusion there, and I'm back with a new determination to make more content for you and to continue this adventure here on YouTube and now expanding to Twitter. So I wanted to talk today about goddess worship. Now, I want to say that there are two distinctive religious concepts. One is that God is a man and a father. And the other one is that there's a goddess that is either the god of this earth or in some places is in place of the patriarchal God. The God of Abraham is what we're speaking of. And so it really goes back to the beginning. And let's start at the very beginning of the Bible. Now, before the Adam and Eve story, there is another creation story that suggests that God made man and women, male and female, okay? And so, according to certain esoteric Jewish mystics, there was a first wife to Adam named Lilith. Now, you've heard me talk about in other videos this Lilith character. It is the person that the Lilith Fair is named after. And the concept of a lullaby, a song that you sing to children to make them feel safe and help them go to sleep, is based in this fear of this goddess, this original wife to Adam, this entity named Lilith. That the word lullaby literally is a translation of an older version of it called, Lilith goodbye. Lilith goodbye, lullaby, lullaby. And so, according to ancient traditions and writings of the Jewish mystics, Lilith was Adam's first wife. And Lilith rebelled against Adam and wanted to be in charge and in control. And they use kind of a sexual metaphor. They say she wanted to be on top. She wanted to be sexually in charge of the relationship. And she did not want to be in any way dominated by or subjected to Adam's authority, which God clearly gave Adam the authority when he gave him the right to name all the animals. And you'll find out when you get deeper into the religious side of what I do here, that authority that God gave us over this earth and the animals and his creation is the basis of the authority that both Jesus operated in when he was here and the legacy of that power that he left us. And it's always been present that God gave Adam the dominion over this earth. And that really bothered Lilith, apparently. And so Lilith rebelled, and because it was prior to the fall, and when humans were immortal, we were mortal beings before the fall. Nobody knows how long the Garden of Eden was there before the fall. How many centuries or eons or millions of years did Adam and Eve live together in the garden? But before the fall, humans were all mortal. We were all immortal, rather. We had we had an uninterrupted lifespan that went on forever. Okay, and even the early people in biblical history lived to be 700, 800, 900 years old. So Lilith, being before the fall, when she rebelled against God, she, being an immortal, became the first goddess. She became the first demon of earthly origin. Okay? And so this Lilith character has survived down through time. One of the reasons that they created a lullaby to begin with was because Lilith has a vengeance against the children of Eve and Adam. And Lilith herself refused to bear children for Adam. And so this independent feminist energy embodied in this demon named Lilith is something that is behind almost every religion that is not Abrahamic in origin. In other words, if its roots are not firmly grounded in the Abrahamic tradition, of patriarchy, then it is basically a feminist matriarchy religion. And this is the primary alternate religion to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, with the exception of Buddhism, which I think is less gender related and more related to the general spiritual person, or the spirit man or spirit woman, whatever the case. And so all the other religions, however, are very much steeped in goddess worship. Would you be shocked to find out that our country was not founded on Christianity? That the founding fathers, as we know it, were practitioners in secret to goddess worship. The evidence can be found from anywhere from your dollar bill to the literal architecture of Washington, D.C. Now, if you ask historians why Washington, D.C.'s structures and symbols, why they seem occultic in nature, they'll laugh it off and say it's just art. But the reality is, there's a thing called sacred geometry. There is an archaeologist who discovered this, and he's using it I see him on YouTube, but I'm not sure what his show was on. I can't remember the name of the guy, and I don't really drop names. I suggest something and you go find it. But he's a mainstream archaeologist, probably maybe a little bit of an agnostic, but he is big on uncovering the truth behind American history, especially. He talks a lot about the giants and the mounds and the Smithsonian cover-up and all of that. And he did a really great video on this, talking about the sacred geometry found in Washington, D.C. What does D.C. stand for? The District of Columbia. If you ask historians who are on the payroll, they will tell you they named it that after Christopher Columbus. And I would argue, then why isn't it called Washington District of Columbus? It's District of Columbia. And who was Columbia? It's definitely not Christopher Columbus. Columbia is the ancient goddess of liberty, the ancient goddess of freedom. That freedom is really, when you examine it, is the freedom from patriarchy, the freedom from male rule and dominance, the empowerment of the feminine. When I was a little kid, there was I think it was Imperial Margarine, I'm not sure, but there was a margarine company who had a little campaign that they did where Mother Nature, who was the author then of things like butter from a cow, right? That Mother Nature got offended when someone gave her margarine because she thought it was butter. And she would say, "It's not nice to fool Mother Nature," and then a lightning bolt would go off. This concept that the earth is a mother spirit is another hint towards this worship of the goddess. Now, Columbia was the goddess of liberty. She's often depicted as she is in the Columbia Movie Company's logo, which is a woman in a white gown holding either a torch or a sword. I think the most famous image of Lady Liberty is the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. And in this depiction, she's holding a sword. One of the other images of the goddess, or of Lady Liberty in this case, Columbia, okay, is that she's somewhat masculine in appearance. She's definitely has all the female parts, but there's a masculinity to her face, to her image, right? She's doing something masculine by holding a sword to begin with, or leading the way with a torch, okay? God intended men to lead, and I can tell you why right up front. Look at our bodies. This camera often makes people think I'm a small man, and every time I meet somebody who knows me from the internet in person, their first statement out of their mouth is, "Wow, I thought you were smaller. I had no idea how big you are." I'm 6'1". I range in weight most of the time on this channel has been somewhere between 190 and 230 pounds. And I have ballooned up to 285 during the pandemic lockdown. But I'm almost 3 feet wide from shoulder to shoulder. That I'm a mountain of a man, and I'm stout looking. And God made men that way for a reason. God made us bigger for a reason, because if you go all the way back to hunter-gatherer days, you're fording your way through a forest, through wilderness, with the unknown ahead of you. There could be animals, there could be beasts of all sorts, there could be pitfalls, there could be dangers. And so the man goes first, and he has the physique for it. He has the body to handle the whatever attacks the family has to get through the patriarch. They have to get past the man. And I will always hold this Puritan truth that men are meant to lead. And that is not to say to my 25% of my viewers that are women and many of my financial supporters, I'm not trying to throw women under the bus at all. I'm saying that the natural, God-given structure for the family and society is not a man in charge and a woman meaningless, or kept in subjugation, or kept down, or kept like livestock. That's not what I'm saying. It's a partnership. That the husband-wife partnership is the foundation of the modern world, and it allowed us to rise up out of the obscurity of the hunter-gatherer, or even older than that, just chaos and mayhem in the caveman days, as it were, the post-flood days. That the partnership between men and women has a structure, right? And goddess worship seeks to supplant that partnership and cause men and women to be in competition with each other, to be in conflict with one another. You know, I think you have to look no further than Proverbs 31 to find a perfect example of a godly woman. In Proverbs 31, you've got a woman she's not some kind of wallflower. She engages in her own side businesses that she runs while taking care of the family, while supporting the husband and the family. And she takes money that she's earned and reinvests it and becomes a small business owner. And it says that she has honor in the gates of the city apart from her husband. But at the same time, everything she does is for the motivation of supporting the family, keeping the family together, and raising the children up in the way that they should go. And all of her hard work is emphasized and focused on that. You know, there's an old saying, behind every good man is a great woman. And behind every great man is a strong woman, or something like that. But I couldn't agree more. That a man who does not have the support of a good wife, a good woman, a man that does not have that balancing of the feminine nature, is a man that is destined to not be successful. The most unsuccessful men are men who never had a woman behind them, or never could keep a woman, or never could attain that partnership. That the most powerful men have been couples, power couples, teams between a man and a woman, not in competition, but in agreement and in partnership with a shared goal of success. And this is what some would call the patriarchal method, the patriarchal theme. But when you get over into goddess worship, what you have is the rebellion of women from this partnership. They want to be in charge and subjugate the man. And it encourages the offspring then to elevate the feminine and diminish the masculine role. And you get female-dominated cultures, societies, and religions. And really, there's only been two competitions in religion: Abrahamic, monotheistic, patriarchal religion, and pantheistic goddess worship. And this goes back to both Lilith and Adam and Eve, and what happened right before the flood, right before the great flood. That was also about this goddess worship. So let's break it down. I talked about Lilith and her rebellion, but what happened to Adam and Eve when they rebelled against God and sided with the serpent? We've talked about in times past how the apple is actually an allegory for a sexual encounter. That they didn't eat an apple as much as she engaged in, how do I put this politely? Well, what's an apple kind of resemble? Okay. And so I've hinted around to this in the past, that the incident in the Garden of Eden was a seduction, that the serpent seduced Eve with words. He made her promises, gave her promises of power. You can be like God. You don't have to be subjected to Adam. And he encouraged her to go get Adam and bring him into subjection to the serpent. And he partook in this as well. And then we have to look at the punishments that God put on Adam and Eve as a result of this commingling with the serpent, with the lizard people. The lizard people. I don't think it was an actual snake. I think it was the lizard people. A little tip of the hat to heckle fish over at Y-Files. Should have had my tinfoil hat today. But you've got this promise of power to Eve. And that was her motivation for partaking in this sin. And God's punishment to Adam and Eve were different. He punished them differently. For Adam, he caused the fruit of the earth to dry up and required us to till the earth and work the earth to make the fruit come forth instead of it growing in such a natural way. And the Garden of Eden was beautiful, and everything you needed was found there, and it was all free, and nobody worked, right? We just enjoyed this free fruit, okay? So God cursed man to have to work the earth, right? But God cursed Eve in when it comes to her sexual reproduction and her relationship with Adam. It says that God would put a desire in Eve and her daughters, a desire for their husband. And even though they had enmity or hate, they would have a desire that they couldn't quench. So that links men and women through a woman's desire, right? And then he cursed her with a painful monthly reminder, right, in blood, of this sin. And he caused her to have pain in childbirth, assuming before the fall, childbirth and reproduction was painless for the female. So you have this punishment of pain coupled with a desire that she can't walk away from men and end the curse. And you start to see the earliest forms of goddess worship included the drinking of, what's the best way to put this, menstrual fluid. The first blood drinking was of that sort. And it was, in some ways, acknowledging the curse, but also a promise to overcome the curse someday. And that these matriarchal goddess worship societies would later give birth to the United States. So let's jump forward back to the founding fathers again. This country was founded by two very different groups of people that were in agreement in some things, but totally opposed to one another in others. You've got the George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson group, right? But they could not have founded this country without the Puritans from Massachusetts. And those people came here, the Pilgrims, came here to escape the oppression that they were facing from the Catholics and the Anglican Church of England. And these people are my ancestors. John Cotton, my 12-time great-grandfather, was one of the founding fathers of Puritanism in America. And his offspring and family are responsible for the oldest non-Catholic church in Boston. And it's all tied into the Salem witch trials and a bunch of other things. This is my heritage, okay? And so you've got these one group of founders who are coming at this from a purely Puritan perspective, a purely religious freedom perspective. Then you have this other group that are Masons. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin. These men were Masons. They were secretly involved in goddess worship, and they worked it into the sacred geometry of Washington, D.C. The evidence is right there. On top of the Capitol is Columbia, the goddess of the goddess of liberty, which is not the kind of liberty that the Puritans believed in. The Puritans believed in their right to live as however they saw fit without control from the government. The liberty that Thomas Jefferson and George Washington believed in was freedom from the church and oppression from moral guidelines. They meant moral liberty. They meant the liberty to commit whatever kind of anti-church behavior without fear of retribution from the church. And this is where the Puritans and these goddess worshiping Masons or Illuminati, where they came together in agreement was because the Puritans were being persecuted by the church, right? And the goddess worship Masons had to be forced underground and operate in secret, also because of the church and the patriarchy religion. So even though they were absolutely opposed to each other concerning what liberty and freedom really meant, they were in agreement that they needed a government by the people, of the people, and for the people that didn't allow foreign interference or dystopian tyranny, and prevented the church from making laws. So even today, this schism in America, these two opposing ideas, are personified right now in the two opposing parties. You have the Republican Party, which is more of the Abrahamic patriarchy conceptual ideology, and they're very much about freedom to worship however you want, to speak however you want, and to not be oppressed. And at the same time, you have the Democrats, which also claim they're all about freedom, but it's freedom from any kind of oversight, total chaotic libertines, right? No guidelines, not even subjecting to God, the woman being an equal and separate entity, the destruction of the family. All of this is tied to that one side, okay? And hey, the labels flip back and forth, but typically you've got God-oriented versus hedonism, and hedonism is directly related to these matriarchal goddess worship cults, of which the Masons are part of. So where's the proof? Well, there's a thing called a megalithic yard. A megalithic yard is the measurement device. It's 2.75 feet. It's shorter than an actual yard. The megalithic yard is prevalent in all of the megalithic structures from antiquity. One might argue the pre-flood structures. Stonehenge is a great example. It's a mathematical equation based on 366, which is the original calendar year. 366 times 2.75 feet, or times the megalithic yard. When you use this method of conversion, a method of measurement, and then you examine all of the Washington, D.C. monuments, all of the, not just the monuments, the structure of the planned city that was put in place by George Washington, that originally Congress, being made up of both these Masons and these Puritans, decided that Washington, D.C. would be a square. But George Washington intervened and made it diamond shape. The diamond, the V, the chevron, and the pentagram are all sacred geometry that relate directly to goddess worship. And in one way or another, they all represent the feminine, female anatomy. Okay? If you know what I mean. That it's, you know. And so, God, I hate to be crude. But yeah, it's all representation of the divine feminine, which is always has been in opposition to the patriarchy, which puts the husband in charge, but yet doesn't subjugate the woman. That's a wrong interpretation of God's intent. God's intent is a power couple. God's intent is a man who takes the lead and a woman who's got his back. And that's how this world was really built, on these precepts, the family, right? The power couple with all of the children, and you know, serving as arrows in your quiver, as the Bible calls a man with many children. And now let's I know I'm jumping around. Now let's jump up to Atlantis and the flood and what went down there. Once again, it goes back to women being seduced by these extraterrestrial demons, these lizard people. You've got the sons of God looked down upon the daughters of men, took them as wives, and the offspring thereof were men of renown. Genesis 6. Okay? So the thing is, though, we always kind of assume that because they must have been powerful entities, that this was an abduction of women and a rape. But when you look into the tellings of this time through Greek mythology and, you know, ancient religions, you get a different picture. It was like the Garden of Eden, a seduction. The women were offered power over this earth by coupling with these aliens. And these aliens were so enamored by women, by the God's creation of women. I know I am too, right? But they then would idolize these women and elevate them above other humans because they were married to these lizard people gods that came from another planet, these fallen angels. And the children were men of renown. The Bible talks about them being men of renown. It doesn't tell you who the feminine were. Who were the daughters of the Nephilim? Who were the Nephilim females? What were they like? Well, the Nephilim men were giants. They were powerful warriors. But the Nephilim women were wizards or witches. They were supernaturally gifted. They had high levels of intuition. They had high levels of clairvoyant ability, mind control. All of that were the female offspring. And that's left out of the Bible but can be found in other sources. And this is why, you know, the Oracle of Delphi, no ancient leader in the Greek and Roman world would engage in any kind of major decision without going to this female oracle first and getting her take on it, her intuition. And this is kind of well, I won't go there, but I do believe that one of the powers that a power couple has is the feminine intuition guiding the man. That I usually don't make decisions without running it past a woman in my life, and for the last few years it's been my sister. You know, if I don't trust my own intuition, and I'll trust hers, but I know she's tuned into the one voice, she's tuned into the Holy Spirit as well, so I get confirmation on my decisions. And ancient men did this as well with these goddess worship cults. And so this has been, down through time, the source of much problems in the world. These two different types of leadership. One is traditional Abrahamic, patriarchal, power couple, family-oriented, and the other one is female empowerment, co-rulership, which really in many cases means women taking dominion over men and becoming the leaders instead. And this is what happened in America, that there was always this fight between these the patriarchal, Abrahamic, family-oriented Puritan people that founded this country, and this cabal of closet worshipers of the feminine energy, and the birthplace of female rebellion. And if you want to look at where America fell apart, it's when the Puritans lost the fight. It's when women did become empowered. And I'm not saying women should have a different set of rights, but I'm saying that the family and the man-woman couple, right, should be at the center of human existence, right? Not this separate competitive man versus woman battle of the sexes. If you want to know where America started twisting off, it's when we started to openly engage in the thing we call the battle of the sexes. I think there even used to be a game show by that name where they would pit women and men against each other in games. That humanity progresses and becomes stronger when men and women are partnered. And it's the old divide and conquer. These lizard people set out from the beginning to reprogram our wives, to break down the family barrier and cause humanity to fall into chaos. It's something that they did before the flood. And Jesus said, this is a Jesus quote, as so in the days of Noah, so shall it be when the coming of the Son of Man appears. So the second coming of Christ, it tells us that the situation or world events at the time of the flood would be repeated in the end times. Here we are in the end times. And I can say that we are looking more and more like this antediluvian world. And some are even arguing that the gods have returned. In other coffee talks, I talk about the return of the pre-flood gods and how we may actually be seeing this deception, not just on a philosophical, mental way, as you see in feminism and the resistance, the matriarchy versus the patriarchy argument that's still going on in our world, but even potentially the crossbreeding, once again, with these lizard people, alien creatures that come here, just like the Garden of Eden, and seduce our women. Just like in the days of Noah, when the sons of God seduced the women of this earth with power. And so sacred geometry and worship of goddess is definitely at the core of the founders. They're not Christians. However, a great number of the founding fathers were Christians, and from the Puritan movement that came here to create a religious safe zone for people of all religions and faiths to not be suppressed and have that kind of freedom. The freedom of the First Amendment is for that purpose, so that you can practice your religion however you see fit. And it's okay if you want to engage in goddess worship. That's your business. That's between you and God. That's personal to me, right? To everyone. It should be personal. Now, having said that, if your religion desires to break down my religion and causes, your religion causes strife in my house and my family and destabilizes my country, then I'm opposed to you, right? And so what we really have is Lilith versus the God of Abraham and the church as we know it, and as especially in this country, the embodiment of Puritanism. Am I saying Puritans had it right? No, I think they were oppressive to women. I think that during America's heyday, we had it down at one point. The men went out and faced the danger, and the women were intensely involved in all of their decision making. They didn't run anything, they didn't do anything, they didn't run it past their wife first. The mother was the mother, like Proverbs 31, that works tirelessly and in the home and outside the home to provide, while the man does what men do, lead, right? And build. We lead and we build. But we never did it alone, right? It was always the power couple. It was always the masculine and the feminine joined in true unity. And this is something that the goddess religions do not teach. They teach the opposite. They teach division and separation between the masculine and the feminine. You'll notice that certain founding fathers had strong families, while others seem to have lives filled with affairs and many women and children of various mother, their children had different mothers. And this was common amongst the Masons, amongst the cabal of goddess worshippers, and the Puritans were the ones that had more steadily and foundationally firm families. But what do you think? Do you think that that I've stumbled across something, that it's literally been the patriarchy versus the matriarchy, the monotheistic belief in God as a masculine versus the goddess worship? And did you know that Washington, D.C. is a shrine to the goddess of liberty, Columbia, and they use the architecture and the sacred geometry of those cult religions in every aspect, from the Pentagon to the Washington Monument to the ellipses found there at the base of it, and even the road structure where it starts to look like either a Mason symbol or a pentagram, depending on how you look at it. And the Pentagon itself is literally a shrine to the goddess worship. Tell me what you think in the comments section. I did more talking than coffee drinking today. If you got something from this, please leave a comment, make a donation to this cause so I can keep making videos. I want to thank all my supporters who took care of me on my trip out to Oregon and back, and I was blessed by all of y'all. There's a link in the description to PayPal, to Cash App, to my email address, and my post office box, so we can talk apart from the channel, apart from the comment section. If you want to talk more about this or any other topic, you can write me. And at any rate, we'll see you next time on Coffee Talk!